So, a moment of high political drama between the US and Nigeria, and potentially real political and military significance for Abuja and its war against Islamist insurgents, banditry, kidnapping, and rising crime. The country is, of course, still reeling from President Trump's threat to use military force on Nigerian soil to tackle Islamist militant groups, accusing the government of failing to protect Christians. The Tinubu administration has roundly denied the allegation and has rejected Mr. Trump's narrative, saying claims of a Christian genocide have been widely discredited. But that hasn't stopped the main agents provocateurs, conservative lawmakers such as US Senator Ted Cruz, from upping the ante. Senator Cruz says that following the designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern, he now intends to take the next step and hold Nigerian officials accountable. He says he'll be very explicit about who they are in the coming days and weeks. So why have the Americans taken this stance? Was the intention to placate right-wing Christians in the US? Or is Mr. Trump seriously threatening to send US troops to Nigeria? Well, let's get a take on how all this is going down in the ruling APC party and the implications for the party. And for this, I'm joined now from our studios in Lagos by the National Publicity Secretary of President Tinubu's ruling APC party, Barrister Felix Morka. Barrister Morka, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I understand it was a bit of a challenge for you getting to the studio, so we really appreciate your taking the time to speak to us. Is this arguably the biggest crisis and the worst nightmare that the APC has faced since the Tinubu administration came to office 2.5 years ago?
Thank you so much, Charles, for inviting me. Yes, I had a difficult time getting here, but I'm here, and that's what matters. I'm not sure that I would characterize it as such. The announcement by the President of the United States, Donald Trump, yes, is of concern to everyone, of concern to us, of concern to, and should be of concern to every Nigerian, for sure. But I'm not sure that I have taken the time to reckon whether this is the most difficult challenge that the APC has faced. Because, beyond the mention by the President of the US, nothing has happened to suggest that this is really an existential crisis. Now, let me just say that the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is on top of this matter. I think we all listened to the address by the Honorable Minister of Information, where he was laying out some of the government's thinking and position on this matter. And I think that usually, under international relations and international law, matters like this are dealt, behind in the back channels between the governments involved. In this case, our government and the government of the United States. Look, I am very certain that when, this, proposed threat by the US President is subjected to proper evaluation and analysis, I don't have any doubt that, it will not, by their own standard, pass every test or any test of reasonableness. Because, the facts on which this suggestion is made, is flawed. It doesn't pan out in reality. There's no, Christian genocide occurring in Nigeria. Charles, you and I have had this conversation, over the, last couple of years. And no one denies that we are challenged by insecurity, largely unleashed by these forces of terror, who I think make capital and make just sadism out of slaughtering people, especially defenseless people. But I think that the government of Nigeria has also been very vehement in responding to these threats. So, for me, as an international law expert and someone who is also was trained in the United States and who understands U.S. legal system, especially their constitutional system, I think I'm probably one of the last people to worry or to freak out about this, situation we're discussing, because I know the U.S. is, a democratic country, with reasonable and reasonably managed, institutions that will weigh in on this. When the facts are put on the table, they will find that the Nigerian state has never been a participant in any program of violence targeted at Christians or anyone else for that matter in the country. They have not. Now, yes, admittedly, the violence we have all witnessed, my earpiece is not staying, so my apologies. The violence we've witnessed has mostly been conducted by non-state actors. These are not Nigerian, military forces that are targeting Nigerians, whether Christians or Muslims. But the facts are that, yes, there's violence perpetrated mostly by, terror organizations and groups, in the country, especially in the northern, parts of our country. But they have also been the target of very serious program of military response and action to defeat terror. Now, at this point, I think that the U.S. government clearly, as in a standing, as perhaps some would say, the leaders of the free world, have a responsibility to work with the Nigerian government, to strategically partner with the Nigerian government, share whatever intelligence that they have to support the Nigerian government to defeat this common enemy, of terror. Now, let me say this, Charles, before you jump in again, and I appreciate you giving me this time to say this. Now, can you imagine? We're already dealing with, this act of terror. Can you imagine what would happen if the United States entered into this theater without guidance, without proper partnership with the Nigerian government? Now, the consequence of that prospective action will not, be contained in Nigeria. Now, what happens in a country of over 200 million people? Should this violence escalate to the point where we begin to really, push refugees out of this country? This will destabilize every country around this region. And the United States itself will not be spared by the pressure that will be unleashed from, really creating an environment where Nigerians feel that they're unsafe and have to then push out of Nigeria. I'm sure that the United States and President Trump is not about to begin a program that will in fact create, proper destabilization, not just in Nigeria, but in neighboring countries, but for that matter, Europe and even Northern America will, I think, feel the pang of whatever may come. So, look, when I think about all of that,
right,
I am quite certain that this president of the United States, who himself, presents himself and is seen by some as a peacemaker, will not begin a program that will in fact be totally counterproductive to the objective of protecting Christians and Muslims who are also equally victims of the violence we're discussing.
Well, Barrister Morka, thank you for setting out your stall there. But I think the issue here for many people is that the Nigerian government is failing to protect people. That's why thousands of people have died over the years. If one person dies in America or one person dies in Europe, that causes a big storm. But in Nigeria, literally thousands of people have been dying over the years. And yes, the government is making some effort, but there isn't a sense at all from a lot of the people who are the victims of these attacks and people who are in the eye of the storm, that the government is there for them. Is there any sense at all in government circles that the frustration of Nigerian citizens on this security issue for both Christians and Muslims has reached breaking point, and that it has taken President Trump's threat of concrete action to wake you guys up? That is assuming you've woken up.
Charles, that is a very unfair assessment, even coming from you. Because, I'm sure you know, if you look at the numbers, some of which were reeled out earlier today, as a matter of fact, every expert you talk to will tell you that we have been witnessing a decline, a steep decline in the numbers of attacks and in the numbers of victims of these, terror-related violence. That is the reality. And, so when in a situation where you are actually witnessing a decline in incidents and in, the number of casualties, there's only one conclusion that follows, which is that the military, under the leadership of this president, are in fact taking the battle to the perpetrators of this violence. Because, that's the only way. Because, terror is terror. If you give terror the space and a free hand, they will exterminate as many millions of people as they can. The fact that the numbers are trending down is nothing but an indication that the military, and let me pause for a moment to also salute our fighting forces who, wake up every day to defend the liberty and the lives and security of our people. So my point is that these, these people who are fighting on our behalf, they deserve commendation. And I think that, you and I will agree on that, it's not easy to fight these shadowy figures who basically sometimes blend in with normal people, everyday people, to disguise and to unleash violence on unsuspecting, innocent Nigerians. And that is regrettable. But to say that the government is not doing enough or the government has been asleep, I think that would be unfair. Under this administration, the military has never been better equipped, has never been better motivated to fight terror, than before. So I think that, we can have a realistic conversation and, really say, look, yes, a lot is being done, but maybe it's not enough. More needs to be done. And a partner like the United States and, some of the EU countries, including, China, other partners, are welcome to support the government. This is the time, in fact, for the United States to take leadership to support this administration rather than act unilaterally without reference to Nigeria. Because, the consequences, like I said, will go beyond the borders of Nigeria. Even as far as the United States, they will feel the impact of unleashing any sort of, disruption in the peace of this country that will push, millions of people out of Nigeria. I think that's not something that the United States, I'm sure, will look forward to.
Okay, well, let me ask you this, because you're saying that the government is doing much better in this fight against extremism and crime. If that is the case, what is your theory as to why this is happening now from the United States? Have you been able to draw an informed conclusion about what is going on?
Yes, look, it's a mix of so many things. It's a potpourri of a cocktail of, causal factors that are pushing this. Some are here in the country, some are external to the country, even some are, domiciled. Some of those causal factors are, out of the United States. Look, let me focus on Nigeria and leave the United States for a moment. Yes, there are people in Nigeria who have pushed this narrative of Christian genocide to aid either their secessionists campaign to suggest that the Nigerian state is not offering or extending protection to them in order to discredit Nigeria and bolster their argument for some type of secession out of Nigeria. There are people like that who do that. Of course, social media is a theater where anybody can play. People who push out stories that are unverified. And I can tell you that a lot of the narrative that has been framed around this question of Christian genocide, which, like I said, I will argue, really, is unsupportable by the evidence that's available, is pushed, on social media. Social media has been the, if you will, the cooking pot for a lot of this narrative that, of course, from the outside of the country, appears to be coming out of Nigeria. But it's not, verifiable information. But then, of course, everyone knows those in the United States who are championing this, the, Christian right, have their own, reasons and their own arguments. But you see, whatever it is, the United States government, of which President Trump is leader, has a responsibility to ensure that it gets the facts straight and right on this matter. Because any decision or action that is predicated on false, argument or false narratives, what I call some, conjured narratives about Nigeria, will not affect Nigeria alone. It will affect every other country within this region. That is for sure. Our borders are open. If anything goes on in Nigeria where Nigerians feel threatened by any kind of military action from the United States, look, all of the neighboring countries will be implicated in this specter of, reaction and, counter-reaction. So I think that this is needless. We can tackle this problem more efficiently if the United States government will partner with Nigeria to, bring any support or assistance that it can muster to the theater to defeat terror that I know the United States stands vehemently opposed to. And, so does Nigeria. So I think that, beyond those who are manipulating the situation, for instance, look at the Nigerian opposition. Why would ADC and, the PDP be issuing statements that are so, mindlessly, unpatriotic? It's wrong. I think there's a time for national reckoning. There's a time for politics. This is not a time for, self-serving, senseless political, noise-making that is coming out of the opposition. A foreign country is issuing a threat to, to conduct military action against our country, to probably even send boots on the ground, on the soil of the sovereign Nigeria. And a political party thinks this is the moment to make political capital. That is utterly irresponsible and despicable.
Can I just come in there?
This is not the time for all that politics.
Right.
We need to focus in that engagement, please.
Right. Can I just come in there? Because the opposition, not just the opposition, but some of the communities in places like Plateau State and several other places have spoken out about the killing of their people back in Lado community, for example, just a few weeks ago. And the opposition's argument is that the government is failing Nigerians, failing to protect them, and that these people have been appealing to the government for a long time, and the federal government has failed to take their long-running security problems in the state perhaps as seriously as it should. So if the government is failing Nigerians and failing them consistently, now that those failures have gone international, you're appealing to the same Nigerians that you failed to protect to come out in your support. I mean, that sounds a bit perverse, doesn't it?
Charles. No, Charles, let me remind you. Boko Haram was not created or did not hit the newsstand in 2015, Charles. Boko Haram, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not a historian, I believe they came along in 2009. APC was not even founded as of 2009. The PDP that is running its mouth today was the ruling party at that time. And they had the opportunity, Charles, to extinguish, to utterly obliterate Boko Haram when Boko Haram was in its infancy, in its incipient stages, before he had the time to become the monstrosity we're confronting today. I think it's actually very hypocritical for the PDP in particular to raise its voice today to speak about the terror that Boko Haram is waging against Nigeria when he had the opportunity to wipe out Boko Haram and he didn't. You see, what I'm saying is that, terror, the fight against terror anywhere in the world is not a piece of cake. It's not a walk in the park. The United States itself, with all of its military might, its sophistication, its technology, up and down, Charles, has not managed to defeat terror everywhere it has confronted terror. The United States was in Afghanistan to confront Al-Qaeda and other forces of terror in Afghanistan. The United States withdrew from Afghanistan without eliminating, stamping out terror in Afghanistan. You see, in Iraq and in Yemen and in so many other theaters of war, the United States is still engaged in ferocious battles till today, decades after September 11. You see, Charles, let's not, when it comes to Nigeria, have this conversation as though the Nigerian government has failed. It has failed. That language is actually, a bit, it's shortchanging. I think the enormous investment, both in the lives of our security forces, in resources we're putting in to fight terror. Terror, by its nature, is not conventional warfare. It's asymmetric warfare. It means that, you don't have soldiers lined up on both sides and firing, weapons, conventional weapons. These are people who are embedded in communities, who live with the people, who terrorize people who are defenseless. So in that specter, you find that it's not easy for the army to just identify who the terrorist is, and every time they bomb and there's a mistake and civilians are killed. Of course, we also come to Arise TV to discuss the tragedy that is involved. But sometimes this is the nature of war, and that's why nobody wants war.
Right.
Which is why the United States doesn't want war in Nigeria. I'm quite certain about that. I think we need to, tamper it down and actually take a perspective and be rational and reasonable in our analysis.
Well, we've only got a few more minutes before we have to end this chat, but I think you're making some very good points there. However, part of the problem in this country, Barrister Morka, has been the deepening poverty, alienation from the state, a sense of lack of inclusiveness, which is one of the reasons why we're seeing all kinds of rising violence in a very complex and volatile situation. Many prominent Nigerians have called for a type of national constitutional conference to properly negotiate the definition of the state outside the parameters foisted on this country by the military in 1999. Would that not seem to be the way to solve a number of problems, including some insecurity, the growing calls for self-determination in parts of this country?
Look, Charles, yes, you have a point, which is that we, as a country, we need to, I think, put a whole lot on the table. And I think that this president, more than any president in recent history, has demonstrated his ability to engage in tough conversations, whether it's local government autonomy or the question of state police system or regional autonomy. I think this president, more than anyone else, has opened up the possibility for qualitative conversation around these issues, including questions of constitutional reform. Look, anything that I think will inure to the benefit of this country, to the emergence of a stronger, more inclusive, more prosperous Nigeria, is what this president stands for. And that's what my party stands for, the All Progressives Congress. And I think that, yes, those who want to be cynical can be cynical. But I think that if you look at what now appears to be the DNA of this administration, yes, this government is just 2 years old. It's not 7 years yet. We're not just nearly 2 years to the second term of this president. This is the first 2 years coming on 3 years now, next year. But I think that it's so short a time for all of these wishes and all of the items on our grand wish list to be accomplished. And I think we must give the government time to, breathe, because it's not just the citizens who breathe. Government also needs to breathe, even when it's tackling hard questions. And, Nigerians have every right to expect the world from their government. I'm a Democrat. I'm a human rights lawyer, a pro-democracy activist. So when I hear people say that, my first thing is that's my tradition. And so I support that Nigerians have the right to ask. But I think that it's also reasonable that we modulate our demands of government, that some of these things are not dictated. Progress, prosperity on any score, on constitutional front, on the democratic front, on the economic front, on the poverty eradication front, they are not dictated by a snap of the finger. They require processes, sometimes that are intersectoral. And harmony is what this government is building.
Right.
The reform we discussed is all part of that strategy to reposition Nigeria for progress and prosperity. And I think that in due time, we will get there. So my appeal to the international community is to support Nigeria, not condemn Nigeria, to partner with Nigeria, not to unleash violence on any section of this country, especially when it's done unilaterally. That is not in keeping with the United States of America as I know it.
Okay. Well, Barrister Felix Morka, just a quick point of correction before you go. You represent the APC, and the APC has not been in power for 2.5 years. It's been in power for 10 years. So let's keep that in mind. That's your party, the APC party.
I was speaking about this President Charles. No, please.
But you represent
I was not speaking about the APC.
Yeah, but you represent the APC, and it's an APC government, and the APC government has there's been an APC government in power since 2015. So
you should have given me the chance to respond to that. Well, listen, I'm going to get you next time. Don't worry, I will get you back.
Don't worry, you will get a chance, as always. But we appreciate your taking the time to talk to us. Barrister Felix Morka is the National Publicity Secretary of President Tinubu's ruling APC party, and he was talking to me from our studios in Lagos. Thank you very much indeed.